My story might resonate with others, but I have some unique details to share, and I couldn't sleep after the final confrontation last night. My wonderful wife, who is 35, and I, a 33-year-old male, are approaching our 8th wedding anniversary in less than 2 weeks. We've been in a blissfully happy relationship for over a decade, with no major disagreements or breakups. We've enjoyed countless laughs, family trips, built our businesses together, tackled yard projects, and our parents to 2 amazing young boys. Our life together has been a true adventure. Here's what's been happening. Last year, my wife interviewed at a well-known long-term care facility and was offered a top position by her now boss. She's been singing his praises ever since, highlighting his dedication to family first, commitment to success, and belief in her potential to excel at the company. However, things took a strange turn on her first night at the job. After a few months, I began feeling increasingly skeptical about some unusual occurrences. Her new job involved extracurricular activities like golf and fundraisers, which was fine, but some things just felt off. While I didn't have specific suspicions initially, over time my intuition started hinting at something fishy going on, whether it involved someone or something else. One evening in June, I found myself filled with anxiety, fearing that something had happened to my wife while she was out with her coworkers after a golf tournament or some other event. I paced around the house, consumed with worry. She had initially told me she'd be back in an hour, but that hour stretched into 2, then 3. My wife and I have a practice of sharing our iPhone locations as a part of our relationship, not due to a lack of trust, but because both of us have young children, we thought it was prudent to keep an eye on each other's whereabouts. Recently, I observed her location remained static, situated beside a bustling road. Attempting to reach her via phone, I encountered straight-to-voice mail responses. Concern began to mount as I pondered if she had been in an accident or some other trouble. Picture this scenario. I was at home, on the verge of contacting the authorities as my wife hadn't returned yet. Just as I was about to initiate the call, she finally contacted me to convey she was en route. Relief washed over me upon hearing from her. However, she explained that her phone had died, and she was in a coworker's car without a charger. Quite unusual, considering her usual habit of checking in with me when staying out late. It could be attributed to her new job and colleagues as she strives to integrate. Frankly, her explanation didn't quite align with my perception of the situation. Here's the kicker. The location where her phone last operated before losing power was along the route to the restaurant they were supposed to meet at. Strange, right? This behavior was out of character for her. Fast forward a couple of months, and my wife has become obsessed with her workouts, weight, and desires for a larger chest. Her morning bathroom routine has extended significantly. Let me assure you my wife is exceptionally fit, far beyond the average gym-goer. She's stunning. I had the chance to meet her boss once. Honestly, he never once met my gaze. Even when we exchanged handshakes, his palms were soaked with sweat. That encounter triggered my intuition, heightening my suspicions. His presence was brief, and he hardly engaged with my wife or anyone else for that matter. The lone interaction he had with me involved asking about my high school, but he didn't even bother to look in my direction as he uttered the words. Essentially, he just grabbed a beer and made a swift exit. Later on, the remaining coworker decided to invite his girlfriend and her daughter over. They all indulged in a few drinks, and my wife managed to persuade them to stay, turning it into an impromptu dinner party. We had a great time all enjoying ourselves, but eventually, the guy and his girlfriend departed around 7 p.m. Now things take an interesting turn. My wife had been contemplating going out for drinks with a friend to celebrate a birthday, but her decision was still up in the air. As the morning raced with her coworkers approached, she finally made up her mind. She headed upstairs, took her time getting ready, and when she returned downstairs, she looked stunning. After bidding me goodbye with a kiss, she headed to a bar on the east side of town. However, her behavior seemed unusually awkward, prompting me to check in and ask if she was okay to drive. She assured me she was fine, claiming she had only consumed 2 drinks throughout the day and wouldn't stay out too late. I think she might have even requested that I wait up for her, though I can't recall precisely. Anyway, I decided to put on a movie and relax while she was out. Not even an hour had passed, and I started feeling uneasy about not receiving a confirmation of her safe arrival. So I turned to Apple's location feature to check on her. What I witnessed left me utterly bewildered. Her location indicated she was at work. However, it wasn't her usual workplace. It was a concealed building across the street from her main office. Oh goodness, I discovered she's employed at a place she never mentioned before. It took me some time to pinpoint it, but once I did, there was no denying it. My mind raced with questions like, did she alter her usual route? Was she making a phone call? What's the purpose of her being there? Why did I feel uneasy about her boss earlier today? And why did she suddenly head back out? That's completely out of character for her. What on earth is she doing there? It doesn't add up why she'd drive west and park at her workplace when she's supposedly meeting a group for drinks on the east side of town, especially since it has nothing to do with her coworkers. Upon her return home shortly after, she greeted me on the couch with this peculiar, exaggerated smile that made things feel a tad awkward. She was gone for just an hour at most, but I'm still struggling to comprehend what's truly transpiring. Wow, my partner keeps expressing her love for me. But then, for a brief moment, a thought crossed my mind. Could it be possible that she was with someone else less than 10 minutes ago? I quickly brushed that idea aside, convincing myself that she was probably in the parking lot to make a phone call or something. Looking back, I realized it was a foolish belief. So the following couple of weeks, leading into July, passed without significant incidents, and I managed to push aside the earlier mentioned episode. Our boys have been attending a summer camp, conveniently situated on the campus where she works. Occasionally, there were situations at her job that required me to pick up the kids. Or she would ask her colleagues, you can probably guess who, to watch over them for a few minutes. Then, something unexpected occurred. I just discovered that her boss has been allowing my kids to hang out in his office, providing them with snacks, and even allowing them to play on his computer. Can you believe that? They've actually grown quite familiar with him. On a brighter note, my spouse mentioned how much they appreciate the support from their new team. Oh, let me share our beach trip with you. We, along with my wife's family, dedicated an entire week to basking in the sun and riding the waves. The next day was spent lounging on the beach, and we even took the kids on some bike rides. It was an absolutely delightful time. However, as soon as we returned, we were thrust back into reality with a hectic work week. To make matters busier, my wife requested that I pick up the kids mid-week so she could join her co-workers for an outing. I was taken aback by the whole situation. It happened to be our eldest child's first day of kindergarten, and we had just come back from our vacation. I found it rather odd that my wife would choose a work gathering over spending time with her son after his inaugural day at school. When I inquired about it, she explained that one of her female colleagues was going through a difficult divorce and wanted to organize a small golf event followed by some food and drinks, while they watched the first preseason football game. Here's what's truly peculiar. During our beach trip last week, my wife's coworker accompanied us and booked a hotel room since she lived far away. My wife mentioned wanting to meet up with her before their golf outing because of her tough situation. Doesn't that strike you as odd? Personally, I found it rather strange, but I chose to keep my thoughts to myself and agreed to pick up our kids to accommodate my wife. However, the catch is that the after-school program where I pick up our kids is situated at my wife's workplace. While it's not a significant hassle for me to get them, it seemed a bit unusual considering their proximity to our home. Meanwhile, I work a 40-minute drive away from there, making it somewhat inconvenient for me to leave work early during our first week back. Finally, the moment arrives, my son's first day of kindergarten. In the morning, we capture some pictures together as we walk our son to school. My wife seems rushed because she doesn't want to be late for work. I even recorded the moment with my phone. We've eagerly awaited this day since preschool ended throughout the entire summer. However, something seems amiss. My wife is behaving oddly, unlike her usual self. She's usually quite enthusiastic about these occasions. As we watch our son enter his classroom, I find it challenging to keep up with my wife on our way back home. She has always been a fast walker, but I'm surprised she didn't slow down on her son's first day of school. Upon our return, she hastily hops into her car and speeds off to work, appearing rather anxious. Towards the end of the day, I struggle to wrap up my work in time to reach my kids' location, which is a 45-minute drive away. Unfortunately, there's a temporary road closure due to a construction site on my route, and to compound my misfortune, the highway is congested with heavy traffic. I feel as though the universe is conspiring to make me tardy. As I sit in my car, stuck in traffic, my mind begins to race, and I can't help but wonder, why did she request that I pick up the kids on our eldest first day of school? And why is she going out tonight instead of being with us? Doesn't she prioritize being there for our son? My heart begins to race because I now realize I'll likely be delayed in picking up our kids from the after-school program. I promptly attempt to call my wife to clarify the situation, but she's not answering her phone. She knows I'm responsible for picking up the kids. Why would she ignore my calls? After all, we're a team, aren't we? Hold on, she's heading to a hotel before playing golf. Am I overreacting here? It certainly feels that way. Yet no, there's nothing suspicious happening. This entire situation is leaving me with a peculiar feeling. Oh, I detest that I'm constantly checking her location while stuck in traffic. So here's the deal. My wife is supposedly staying at a hotel in our city where we both live and work, but it's farther from the golf course than it should be. Naturally, my mind begins to race, and I'm thinking there's no way she's there with her boss, right? But if she is, they're probably all at the bar having drinks. Wait, why are they even at a hotel? I attempt to call her, but she's not answering, so I reach out to the aftercare program and learn that she's supposedly there with her female coworker. Something doesn't add up. I'll tell you that. The person in charge of the after-school program reassures me that there's no need to panic and assures me that the kids will be fine. They advise me to take my time and make my way over whenever I can. As I approach the highway exit leading to my wife's workplace, where the aftercare program is located, I notice that my GPS is guiding me to exit right by the hotel where she's supposedly staying. Quite a coincidence, I must say. So here I am, driving along the ramp, already 10 minutes late to pick up my kids. I know I'm acting foolishly, attempting to check my wife's location on my phone while driving and contemplating whether I should just be 5 minutes late picking up the kids or not. While doing this, I hastily pull over at a hotel and confirm my worst suspicions. My wife's location starts moving, indicating her departure. Due to heavy traffic that's 45 minutes away, the hotel we were staying at and my GPS directing me on a particular route to collect our kids. My wife passes by in the opposite direction as she joins the highway. It's such a terrible stroke of luck. I'm freaking out, trying to catch a glimpse of her car or even her boss's car. You know, the one he drove when he visited my place and met me. But I can't spot either of them. I'm so anxious that I'm seriously struggling to keep my focus on the road and not swerve off the highway. I don't know, I can't believe I missed her. She just walked right past me. It's driving me insane just thinking about it. I'm pretty sure she was in that room for at least an hour. Now I'm beginning to feel like this is my fault and I'm attempting to convince myself that it's not real. But deep down, I know I messed up. The guilt is really starting to weigh on me. I feel awful about monitoring her like this, but I'm attempting to justify it due to my overwhelming anxiety. What in the world is happening to me? I arrived fashionably late to collect the kids, still plagued by anxiety over my wife's unresponsiveness, but now I'm starting to panic because my worst suspicions might actually be becoming a reality. To add to my distress, she still hadn't returned my calls. Later, after my kids and I were already home and having a meal, I finally received a response from her. I think I sent her a picture of us hanging out without our shirts on. Her reply was simply, "Wow, I love you guys." Before we called it a night, I decided to try something different and FaceTime her with the kids. It's not our usual practice, but I felt it might be a way to catch her in the act if she's up to something fishy. She answers, and I can see she's at a bar. But thankfully, her boss isn't present. Perhaps she was genuinely telling the truth about being at the hotel with her female coworker. So I was with my kids, and one of them suddenly asks, "Hey, where's that guy who always gives us snacks when we come to the office?" Then the camera pans over, and we see him smiling and waving at my kids. We exchanged goodnight wishes, and I put the kids to bed. After what feels like an eternity, she finally walks through the door. She expresses gratitude that I took care of the kids, fed them, put them to bed, and handled everything in between. She conveys her love for me, and we share an intimate moment. However, despite all the affection and love, I can't shake this sense of violation and unease. The evidence I uncovered was just too glaring to ignore. Fast forward 3 days later, and it's Sunday morning. My wife and I had planned to take the kids hiking for the day. As soon as we wake up, my wife grabs her phone and starts scrolling through it. I didn't think much of it at the time. She then heads out for her usual early morning. As I descended the stairs, I grabbed her iPad, which both of us used for music. Oddly, it had undergone an update the night before, though I'm uncertain if it's relevant to what transpired next. Just as I was about to launch Apple Music to kickstart my day with some tunes, a notification on my iPad seized my attention. It was a message filled with emojis from my partner's boss. The message was something like, "Hey there, good morning, it's such a beautiful day for a run." This was an unprecedented sight on my iPad. Almost absent-mindedly, I tapped on the message, revealing a subsequent one that showed my wife had messaged him as soon as she woke up. Panic overcame me, and I hastily deleted the message. In hindsight, I have no clue what was going through my mind at that moment. What on earth was I thinking? Well, things have taken an unexpected turn, and I've stumbled upon compelling evidence that I can overlook. My wife returns from her jog, and I'm rather upset, but I make an effort to remain composed and avoid outbursts. Instead, I recount what the guy wrote to me in my own words. She appears perplexed and uncomfortable with the situation, so I guide her to the dining room where I sit her down and gaze into her eyes from just a few inches away. Me. "So what's happening between you and your boss these days?" Her. "What? Nothing? He's my boss and he's almost 60 years old." She regards me with a look of disbelief. Me. "We have our 2 adorable boys in the other room. What's going on?" I display the text messages. Her. "I'm telling you the truth. Bay is just a playful nickname we all use, and we're merely competing on our Apple Watches. I promised him I would go for a run. I swear there's nothing going on between us." As I walk away, I can't help but think that perhaps I shouldn't have said anything. Maybe I should have remained silent, allowed the text messages to continue, and waited for something that wouldn't deceive me. Nevertheless, I'm at a point where I simply want her to be honest and forthright with me. So we headed the trail for our hike, and things feel somewhat awkward, particularly with her displaying unusual behavior throughout. Eventually, we conclude the lengthy and quiet hike, and the kids end up falling asleep on the ride back. I opted to address the text message she had received earlier that morning and communicate how much it had been bothering me. I mean, who sends a message first thing on a Sunday morning unless they have something significant on their mind, right? Impressively, the moment I brought it up, she promptly acknowledged how troubling the situation appeared. I could sense that she had been contemplating it throughout the day, and she didn't attempt to refute that fact. Nevertheless, she did deny any suspicion of wrongdoing. Meanwhile, the notion of the hotel incident from Hashfor continued to pester me, akin to a persistent headache. Later that evening, we uncorked a bottle of wine and revisited the topic of the text message. I had hoped that she might divulge more details, but regrettably, she persisted in denying any misconduct and reassuring me that everything was fine. Fast forward almost 3 weeks later, last Saturday was quite an eventful day for me. I woke up with an intense gut feeling that my wife might be involved in an affair. This occurred on the same day as one of my company's most significant annual events, so needless to say, I was under a great deal of stress. Despite being engrossed in my work, I found it impossible to escape my lingering thoughts about the hotel incident that had troubled me for weeks. To compound matters, my wife and I used to go to the gym together, but she now took our kids along while I headed to the office. I was a bundle of nerves as I tried to set up for the event, and it felt like my emotions were reaching a boiling point. Fast forward to last Saturday, and I had a rather unusual experience. I woke up with an intense gut feeling that my wife might be involved in an affair. This all occurred on the same day as one of my company's most significant annual events, so needless to say, I was under a great deal of stress. Despite being swamped with work, I couldn't shake off my preoccupation with the lingering hotel incident that had been bothering me for weeks. Additionally, I had a pending task that I had been meaning to address for the past 3 weeks, so I made the decision to call the hotel. I fervently hoped that the universe might provide me with a sign that would confirm my wife's female coworker as the one who had booked the hotel room. My phone began to ring, but I hastily disconnected the call after the second ring. However, I soon began to question whether I truly desired to uncover the truth. Perhaps it was better to remain in the dark. After all, I had work to attend to, so I temporarily set aside those thoughts. Meanwhile, my wife was at home tending to the children. I felt a pang of guilt for not hurrying back to be with her, even though I might have had enough time to return before their bedtime. As the day neared its end, an unsettling feeling persisted, as if something were amiss. It's Sunday morning, and we had arranged to visit her brother's house to watch football. Regrettably, I had to head to work, which is unusual for weekends, to address some issues stemming from the previous days of end. Meanwhile, she went to the gym with the intention of picking me up at my workplace so we could head to her brother's place together. As I began packing my belongings, her iPad caught my eye, and although I felt a tinge of guilt, I also knew that there had been some wrongdoing on her part that justified what I was about to do. She had already figured out how to sign out of iCloud and disable text notifications, a clear indication that she was concealing something. As I looked at her boss's contact card, I noticed that she had toggled her location sharing on and off with him the night before. So I decided to delve into my girlfriend's photo stream. Initially, everything appeared routine as I perused her albums, but I stumbled upon something intriguing labeled deleted photos. I had a hunch this would be worth investigating, and indeed it was. Among the images were pictures of her in her underwear, taken the day after we returned from our beach vacation and the morning before she returned to work. I couldn't help but wonder who she had sent them to because I certainly hadn't received them. It struck me as a departure from her usual behavior, shedding light on the seriousness of their relationship. Then I stumbled upon what seemed like an accidental screenshot on her phone of a text conversation with her boss from the day before their hotel stay. Essentially, the message revolved around their plans to have lunch together, but it was buried amid a flurry of heart emojis. To make matters worse, the boss concluded the message with, "I've been eagerly anticipating seeing you since last Friday when you left. I'm eagerly awaiting your arrival, babe." I was examining my wife's iPad browsing history when I stumbled upon a Google search for how to say one more day in Spanish. She conducted this search on the same day she sent me those alluring underwear pictures just a day before we returned to work. It made me reminisce about how she used to flirt with me when we first got together over a decade ago. Now, someone else is experiencing that facet of her personality. I can no longer deny it. After 2 months of attempting to overlook the glaring reality, I am now entirely convinced that my life is on the brink of a significant transformation. As planned, I head to my workplace and she joins me there with the children. We spend some time together, but I am still in shock, and she can discern that something is amiss. Our drive to her brother's place is marked by an almost complete absence of conversation. As I grapple with this newfound realization, and she sits across from me, appearing utterly terrified. In response to my distress, I reached out to a colleague, a man I collaborate with, and who also happens to be a partner at a highly reputable local law firm. He happens to be one of the most accomplished divorce lawyers in the state, so I thought he might be able to offer some guidance. I contacted him, and he promptly returned my call. I stepped outside and attempted to articulate the situation to him, although I was stammering and overwhelmed. Fortunately, he succeeded in soothing my anxieties and advised me that the best course of action would be to have an open and direct conversation with her in person. Regardless of how the situation unfolded, what truly matters is what's written on those cards. Consequently, I consulted my lawyer, and we made our way back home. An intense atmosphere of tension enveloped us, and no words were exchanged between us. Once I'm fairly certain the kids are asleep, I head to the kitchen and wait for her. I bring up the same inquiry I had posed earlier. What's happening with our marriage? Then I assert that I have undeniable evidence of her involvement with her boss, making it impossible to deny. She reacts intensely, though not a single tear escapes her eyes. Surprisingly, she launches into an explanation even before confirming anything. She begins by expressing how distant she has felt from me throughout the summer, which, quite frankly, isn't surprising. The odd occurrences began in early June and have persisted like clockwork since she began working with this individual. She admits to spending time with him, but refuses to acknowledge anything more. I decide to be direct and inquire, "Have you become close with him?" She denies any such thing. I press further. Did something physical happen between you two? She negates this as well. I repeat the question, and she eventually admits that they kissed. I take a moment to digest this revelation. Curiosity leads me to ask where this kiss took place. She stumbles over her words, revealing her lack of truthfulness. She claims it happened after work. I persist. Where exactly? She struggles to answer. I inquire further. Did you book a hotel? She confirms. Was he there? I ask. She admits to his presence. What about your coworker? I question. She denies their presence. I then clarify it, so you went to a hotel with your boss just to kiss. She affirms this, but insists that nothing more transpired. I challenge her, asking, what else did you two do then? She responds, we talked. I point out that adults typically engage in more than just conversation when going to a hotel and suggest that they became intimate. She doesn't dispute this, but maintains that she couldn't bring herself to go further. We engage in a lengthy, albeit difficult conversation, devoid of yelling or shouting. Throughout our discussion, she repeatedly states, I want you, I want this, I want us. I don't know what I was thinking. She confesses that although she created some distance between us, our marriage didn't have any significant issues. We went on vacations, maintained a fulfilling intimate life, raised our children, and enjoyed romantic dates. It took approximately half an hour for the full impact of the situation to register, hitting me with overwhelming force. To clarify, you wanted me to leave my job early to pick up our kids from the after-school program conveniently situated at your workplace where you interact with this individual. This was all to facilitate your early departure from work to rendezvous at a hotel with him and become closer. Moreover, this was orchestrated during our family vacation, where you omitted the fact that it was our son's first day of kindergarten. I distinctly remember seeing the text message from #6, eagerly awaiting her arrival. Their intimate plans had been in motion for a while, and I recall discussions about the hotel during our vacation. This was not an impulsive decision. This conversation is leading nowhere and feels like a new form of torment. It's the last place I want to be at the moment. Eventually, we both retire to bed, but her attempt at affection sends shivers down my spine. I feel repulsed, violated, and utterly hollow. Once it ceases, I spend the following 3 hours in a state of wakefulness, trapped in a daze. I can't endure it any longer, so I turn to the internet, hoping to find stories of couples who have navigated similar situations and emerged stronger. Undoubtedly, this situation is incredibly challenging. It's about recognizing that returning to the way things were isn't possible, and that it's time to move forward. Even though relinquishing aspects like finances, children, love, and memories is agonizing, it feels dreadful and seemingly hopeless. Last night's sleep eluded me, and I contemplated the idea of divorce. My thoughts were in disarray, and when my partner woke up and inquired about my state, I was at a loss for words. Subsequently, I confronted her about #2, confirming my initial gut feeling. She could no longer deny it, and her excuse that it just started held no validity. I directly informed her that I was aware of her presence with him at that location. She admitted to merely having a conversation in the car, but the uncertainty of what truly transpired remains. This further substantiates that there's more to this situation than she has disclosed. When she stepped into the shower, my composure unraveled completely. I'd managed to hold it together throughout the night, but upon waking, I succumbed to tears. I realized that one of my sons was already awake and using the restroom in the adjacent room, and I worried that he might have heard my sobbing. I crumpled to the floor and wept inconsolably right in his presence, witnessing one of our innocent and malleable sons, completely oblivious to the world. Shattered me. How could someone be so thoughtless and self-centered as to forget about this precious child entrusted to our care? Subsequently, our other son entered the room and found his father on his knees, embracing his younger brother while sobbing. It was astonishing how my life had transformed in a mere moment. Everything had abruptly shifted. Summoning the resolve to leave my bed, I descended the stairs to prepare some coffee. My partner remained unaware of the turmoil in my mind. The previous night had been tumultuous, filled with restless thoughts about whether I could overcome what had transpired between us. It felt as though all the effort we had invested in building our life together had been in vain. In the heat of the moment, I even uttered the word divorce, but I was utterly perplexed about how to proceed. We sat with our children, attempting to have breakfast and grapple with the uncertain future before us. The atmosphere was undeniably tense. I accompanied my elder son on his walk to school, where he had just commenced kindergarten 3 weeks earlier. This was the same day my wife had planned a romantic excursion with her boss. I had to muster a facade of strength and stifle my tears, observing my little boy dart off toward the playground, frequently glancing back to ensure I was still there, tugged at my heart. He held great affection for me, and witnessing his rapid growth pained me deeply. While standing there, I noticed other parents arriving, some hand in hand and appearing content. It was astonishing how drastically my life had transformed within a mere 12 hours. Oh, I almost forgot to mention that my wife has been dealing with this situation for a while now, though the last hotel incident occurred only a few weeks ago. She informed me that she canceled her upcoming business trip to California with him, the one that had been causing the anxiety for weeks. Additionally, she's withdrawing from a program that required her to collaborate closely with him. Apparently, they will now occupy opposite sides of the building. Frankly, I'm uncertain how to interpret all of this. Here I find myself ensnared in this predicament. The thought of a breakup wounds me more deeply than enduring the current situation. I struggle to focus on anything, my work suffers, and I can't even muster the appetite to eat.